Alright people, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you'll know when I upload the next video and you'll be supporting my channel. Follow me on Twitter. Every time I upload a new video, I'll be tweeting. Ladies and gents, almost Reacts, and this is why Japan is shrinking fast by the channel RealLifeLore. Yeah, I remember, long time ago when I was a kid, there was a saying here that Japan was, I guess, sinking, not shrinking. Is it the same thing? That it was, slowly going, I guess below the sea level, or slowly, I guess one day it will be underwater or something. I remember as a kid, people used to say that. I didn't know how accurate that was, but I guess shrinking, sinking, same thing, I guess, is going below water slowly. I don't know, we'll see. Yeah, I haven't done RealLifeLore video for a long time, but obviously one of the best channel that is, right? If you want to have some, I guess, general information, I guess, it's always awesome. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. And by subscribing, you'll be supporting my channel. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be up tweeting every time I upload a new video because YouTube doesn't send notifications lots of times. So that way you'll know. Check out the cast for all the different playlists like RealLifeLore, Kazgazad, CGP Grey, Warhammer 40k. And yeah, let's watch it.
This video is made possible by Henson Shaving. Begin your premium shaving experience with a free 100 pack of blades when you buy a razor using the link down in the description below. Japan is one of the world's most important, influential, and powerful late-game civilizations. Home to nearly 126 million people, the Japanese economy is the third largest in the world after China and the United States, and correspondingly, Japan ranks third of all the world's countries in total number of assets and total amount of wealth. Japan further possesses one of the world's most powerful militaries.
Yeah, I mean, for being such a small geographical country compared to the entire globe, it is really impressive how big it is in this way, I guess.
One of the foremost leaders in the automotive, robotics, and electronics industries, while her culture is widely known and regarded across the world. By all accounts, Japan is one of the 21st century's great powers. But Japan also has a massive and persistent problem that has been making the country weaker and weaker now for decades. And that problem is simple. Japan is shrinking, not in terms of land or territory, but in terms of people, which at first seems a little strange. Japan is, after all, one of the most densely populated and urbanized countries on the planet. More than 90% of the population live in cities. And with a population of more than 38 million people, the Tokyo metro area is the largest metropolitan area on the planet. More people live inside of the greater Tokyo metro than all of Canada combined, and all in an area that's only a fraction of the size of England. But Japan's population, while massive and concentrated, is also the oldest in the entire world. Japan today is experiencing what's called a super aging society across the entire country that's unprecedented anywhere else in the world. Today,
holy shit. Okay, so that's what it means. He's not talking about land. So I guess what I heard was bullshit when I was a kid. Japan is not sinking, apparently. Alright. So he's talking about the age. I mean, I've heard about that, right? The age gap is, really big in Japan. There are way too many old people than the young one because, I don't know, people are not getting married or something. I don't know. Because I'm pretty sure there wasn't a policy, one child policy or something in Japan, right? Like how it was one in China. It's just, just circumstances is that this just happened, I guess. There wasn't any underlying issue or something. I guess people are not just getting married or, procreating, I guess.
More than 1 out of 4 Japanese people are above the age of 65, which is approximately 36 million people, and is close to the entire population of either Greater Tokyo or Canada. This is the highest percentage of elderly people of any country in the world, and is substantially higher than most other places. For context, here's a list of other countries by elderly population, and Japan's is above them all at a whopping 27%. But
I mean, yeah, but come on, I thought it would be whopping massive difference, but Italy is just like 4%. Germany, I mean, fucking hell, Germany is like 5.5%. I mean, yeah, obviously that makes a difference, still. Okay.
27%. But to be fair to Japan, a lot of this is simply due to the fact that the life expectancy rates within the country are literally unmatched anywhere else. As of today,
Damn.
the average Japanese person at birth is expected to live to the old age of 85 years, which is higher than any other country and substantially higher than any of those countries with younger populations that I mentioned earlier. People in Japan simply live
I
longer.
mean, when you live in a condition like, I remember, I don't know what it was. I think I learned that in Top Gear, I guess. If the train is coming in, if train is like 2 or 3 minutes late, they give you the free ticket and write a letter to your employer like why you were 3 minutes late. If you are like that, I mean, it's just surprising that in that society people live 85 years old, right?
Lives than any other people in any other country in the world for a very long list of reasons. Decades of peace and prosperity following the Second World War, some of the most advanced medical technologies in the world, and dramatically improved nutrition are all heavily contributing factors. All of this has led to the somewhat unique situation of there being more than 2 million people in Japan who are older than 90 and more than 80,000 people who are older than 100, which is rather incredible because the Japanese people themselves only constitute about 1.6% of the entire worldwide human population. But of the humans alive today who are above 100, nearly 20% of them are all Japanese. In isolation, the incredibly long lives of people in a country is not a problem, and if anything, it's a huge sign of tremendous success because it shows that the country is healthy, peaceful, and prosperous enough to enable so many people to live so long. But when combined with Japan's other problem, it makes the aging and shrinking problem that the country is going through even worse. And that other problem is an incredibly low birth rate. Like every other industrialized country that made the transition from an agrarian society, Japan's birth rate exploded throughout the process and peaked in the 1920s, when Japanese women, on average, were having 5 children, which was dramatically increasing Japan's population. In 1945, immediately after the Second World War, Japan had finally just ended more than 8 years of continuous warfare against pretty much the entire rest of the world that saw the deaths of around 3 million Japanese, which was about 4% of their total pre-war population. At that point, Japanese women were still having 4 children on average, while the average life expectancy for anyone born in Japan was only 52 years, a far cry from the 85 of today. But after 1950, Japan's birth rate began to take a nosedive to the point in the 1960s, Japanese women were only having 2 children on average, and in every single year after 1974, the average has been less than 2 children, meaning that Japan's births have been below the country's natural population replacement level for nearly half a century. In 2005, the Japanese fertility rate hit an all-time low when they sank to Japanese women having, on average, just 1.26 children each, and it's barely
that's the problem with populations, right? If you are birthing a lot of children, like 4 or 5 children, eventually in a few decades, if you suddenly go to just birthing 2, 3 or less than 2, 1, 2 type of children, we will come to a point eventually where there are more people dying than giving birth. I mean, that's the whole point of it, but that does create an issue on economy overall. And that could have a chain effect eventually that causes things like this, where I guess Japan population shrinks rapidly, I guess.
barely recovered from there since even today, the average is just a tad over 1.4. Put together, this means that the Japanese population reached the highest that it's ever been in 2008 at about 128 million people, and it's been continually shrinking ever since then. Today, Japan's population is about 2.4 million people less than it was in 2008, and it's rapidly getting worse. If the demographic trends remain the exact same as they are today, then Japan's population will decrease by about a third to only 87 million people by the 2060s, and will only be the world's 22nd most populous nation then. So, the million-dollar question here is this: why are Japanese people having so few children? Well, there's a lot of factors, but a really big one is that young people in Japan are facing a lot of insecurity around employment. Nearly 40% of the entire Japanese labor force today are irregular employees, which means that they're working only temporary part-time jobs or gigs, and they earn about 53% less money than workers their own age who work in more established firms or businesses. To make matters even worse, more than 1 in 10 Japanese employees work over 60 hours a week. More than 9,000 Japanese companies have employees working more than 80 hours of overtime a month, most employees don't even take half of their allotted annual paid leave time off, while 3 out of 10 women do not take any childcare leave. Many Japanese men and women simply feel overworked and are just too fatigued to bother with pursuing romantic relationships or families. Which brings us to the next problem, the
Holy shit, I mean, that makes sense. So I guess certain reforms are in order, right, by the government to ease the, I guess, corporate pressure, let's just say, with the jobs and things, right? Make permanent jobs and things like that. I don't know, something. Because, yeah, it would make sense that, this kind of a big metropolitan type of environment where everything is just corporate jobs, right? And, the pressure is high all the time. You don't even have permanent jobs. You are just working every time. You don't have time to go on a date and think, pursue anything, I guess. It's like, I don't have time for this. I have way too much things to do. Kind of makes sense. I mean, that is a problem with lots of major cities in the world right now.
Very unusually high rates of virginity and abstinence. There was this study that was conducted back in 2015 that found 1 in 10 Japanese adults in their 30s, men and women both, reported absolutely no heterosexual experiences of any kind. And then, even after the researchers adjusted their calculations to account for people who may have had any same-sex experiences, they still found that 1 in 20 Japanese adults in their 30s reported absolutely no sexual experience of any kind. And the fact that Japan's population is shrinking by so much has caused a whole lot of unexpected and pretty interesting problems. Currently, for every 5 workers in Japan, there are 2 elderly people who are beyond retirement age, and in order to support them, Japan is expected to be spending 28% of their entire national income on social welfare by the middle of this decade in 2025. And it's inevitably just going to keep getting even worse. By 2060, that number is expected to be 4 elderly people in retirement for every 5 workers, and nearly 40% of the Japanese population by that point are expected to be seniors, which means that the government is going to have to be spending even more on healthcare and welfare. But this is going to be hard to sustain because, as Japan's elderly population increases, the costs required to support them obviously go up as well. But as the young population of workers continues to decrease, so too does Japan's tax base and income, which means that the government has no other choice but to continue borrowing more and more money. This problem has already gotten severe enough that Japan's current debt is more than 13 trillion US dollars.
Holy shit, that's just fucked up. So I guess more elderly people, so I guess people has to work harder and harder. So more people are not, having relations and creating more people, I guess. So more elderly people than the younger people. So it just, I guess, goes downhill from there, right? The economy goes down, more debt. That's a fucked up and vicious cycle.
Which is more than 266% of the entire Japanese annual GDP, meaning that Japan is already by and far the most indebted developed country in the world. It also means that the government is closing down more and more schools for kids to the tune of about 400 every year, and replacing many of them instead with nursing homes for the elderly.
Whoa.
It also means that ever since 2014, there have been more adult diapers sold in Japan than baby diapers. Since there are so many elderly people and fewer youth, a modern phenomenon known as kadokushi has been becoming more and more frequent, where every year, thousands of isolated, lonely, elderly people die and go unnoticed for several days and, in some cases, even weeks. It's a very unique kind of modern tragedy. Now, the obvious answer to all of these problems that we haven't discussed at all yet is immigration. Western European countries, along with the United States and Canada, have all pretty much solved their own plummeting birth rates and demographic crises by encouraging young, working-age people to immigrate from elsewhere. But Japan has resisted this option since pretty much forever. Currently, only about 2.3% of the Japanese population are immigrants, which is the lowest percentage of any developed country in the world, and in 2015, less than 10,000 applications for Japanese citizenship were even approved by the government. People just don't really move to Japan very often, and it's largely because, for centuries, Japanese civilization has been pretty opposed to it. After all, Japan is a bunch of isolated islands separated across the ocean from the rest of Asia, and across the centuries, Japanese rulers have taken advantage of that fact by completely banning all foreigners from even entering, as they did between the 17th and 19th centuries. countries. Unlike other developed countries, Japan is basically an ethno-state and has simply never really had any history of immigration from abroad. And as a result, Japan is today the 6th least diverse country in the entire world, with nearly 98% of the population being ethnically Japanese. And there are fears and concerns among many that opening up the country to large-scale immigration from abroad will permanently change Japan's unique culture and identity. But
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of understandable, right? That's how they were before the Americans arrived, right? They basically closed gate and everything, just let them, I guess, come to one singular port and never let them in and things like that. So they've been like that from the start, so it's kind of understandable why they've been like that. And yeah, culture changing, I mean, that's the fear everyone has, right? Whenever they talk about immigration, it's kind of understandable. But right now, I guess they might not have choice, since elderly is just rising and there are no many young people. I mean, economy cannot go forward without actual manpower, right? So like he said, it will be just vicious cycle. Less and less young people, more elderly. Now young people has to work more harder to pay for the elderly. So more stress, more people not procreating. It's just a vicious cycle.
they may not have any other choice. A UN study conducted in 2000 found that in order for the country to maintain its worker-to-retiree ratio, the country would either have to raise the retirement age of workers to 77 or allow a net immigration of 17 million workers by the year 2050. In reality, Japan's primary crisis in the 21st century is what decision to make in a binary choice. Either continue on with their downward trajectory the way things are and end up with a population of less than 100 million people by 2050, and with nearly 40% of the people remaining being over the age of 65, with all of the associated economic problems that will come with, or begin encouraging dramatically more immigration from abroad, with all of the associated social problems that'll come with. The choice is ultimately Japan's to make. The world is full of important choices. Some are massive in scale and determine the fate of an entire civilization, like Japan's choice, while others determine the fate of an individual, like choosing the correct razor to use when shaving, like this one. It's made out of solid.
RealLifeLore is smooth whenever doing transition. That's great. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a their issue that more immigration will mean the culture changing. That is damn true, I guess. That is obviously that's going to be the case. Cultures will change, right? I mean, all the thing that makes Japan, all the things we think of might change eventually if they let more and more, I guess, immigrants arrive there. I mean, that is what happens when you mix every people around the world. But they have to do that now, right? I mean, they can't do how China is doing with the pandas. Like, okay, come on, procreate. They can't do that. I mean, it's they can't force people to procreate. So then they have to let people in. Otherwise, it's just a vicious cycle. All right, people, that was why Japan is shrinking fast. Means why why elderly population is rising, younger population is going down. It's an economical disaster. But yeah, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cards, check out the ink cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.